Hello, my name is Elizabeth Simonton, and I am the co-founder and CEO of the nonprofit organization ICU Baby. Since 2015, we have run comprehensive NICU family support programs here in South Florida, serving nearly 200 NICU beds and thousands of families. In this clip, I will be the mouthpiece for our team of mentors to share with you what we have learned in our work supporting NICU families. I'm going to talk about what I call parenting power, the power of empowering parents to be active participants in their baby's NICU care. What we know is that when we engage parents in their baby's direct care, the quality medical outcomes you can achieve as healthcare professionals can be elevated even further. So we changed the lens of thinking of parents as visitors in the NICU and instead key participants in NICU care. Before we start with the 10 tips, I think it's always important to pause and establish some common realities that are generally true for all NICU parents. The 3 truths for almost every NICU family. Truth number 1, all families have a story, and that story does not begin at a NICU admission. What leads up to a NICU admission is often a very complicated story: pregnancy loss, infertility treatments, bed rest, several false starts and visits to triage, or an unexpected delivery that was perhaps scary and traumatic. Truth number 2, life outside the NICU is complicated. All families have a life outside of the NICU they need to balance now with their time in the hospital. And this is where we speak most prevalently about barriers to being there. Parents have jobs. There are other siblings at home with no alternate childcare. There's also financial insecurity and sometimes even food and housing insecurity as well. Routines are interrupted and suddenly new routines need to be created. Life inside the NICU is complicated. Your world in the NICU directly contradicts what society tells us the new baby world should look like. Babies are enveloped in technology, not soft bassinets and blankets. The NICU is entirely new. The words, the sounds, the smells, the sights. So when we look at these 3 truths, we may wonder, how are we going to empower these parents who may feel powerless, at your mercy and at the mercy of this circumstance they have now found themselves in? So much of what I've explained, the parents haven't been able to control. And as they start to watch you care for their baby in this setting that they're unfamiliar with, that's where they feel even less in control. But this is really where we can change the cards. In giving parents some things they can do, in giving them a role, you are giving them power. And you can only begin to imagine what that feels like and how healing and helpful that can be psychologically. 10 parent pro tips. Parents want to feel informed, feel heard, feel like a partner, feel needed, feel included, feel able, feel successful, feel healthy, feel well, and feel united. Parent pro tip number 1. Giving information requires communication, and this is the power of information. Some parents are afraid to ask their healthcare team for updates, and we know some others want the equivalent of what is a sports commentator. There is a balance. Here are our suggestions. Regularly communicate. Share with parents even that there are no updates. Be crystal clear with the possibility of common setbacks up front. And then when there is news of a setback, they aren't blindsided. Make sure they understand what you are telling them. There are 2 points to make here. First, this begins with linguistic accessibility. If a native Spanish-speaking mother can speak to you in English, it does not mean that they are comfortable carrying on a complex medical conversation about the well-being of their baby in English. Always ask if they would like a translator. Second, even if English is their first language, the language of the NICU may be entirely new to them, and they may not understand many of the terms you are using. Invite them to ask questions so you can ensure comprehension. Finally, it's not what you say, it's how you say it. We don't want to alter the news, but rather it's best practice to consider the way you're delivering the message. When speaking with parents, consider their emotional state, language, culture, and education. Parent pro tip number 2, the power of a voice. Feeling heard bestows the feeling of power. Perhaps don't just share the information. Perhaps give parents the opportunity to have a voice. Some parents, for personality reasons or cultural reasons, need to be invited to speak up. This is where we say to parents, you can advocate for your baby. You won't be able to make the decisions in the NICU, but you can be involved in the decision-making processes. Then parents are empowered to feel like the team collaborated with me to arrive at this course of care. The power of a voice creates a conversation, pulling parents up from the role as a visitor or a spectator and making them come into their baby's direct care. Parent pro tip number 3, recognizing the power of your power. Feeling like a partner bestows the feeling of power. Parents can often feel the aura of you in your positions as doctors and nurses and therapists. The well-being of their newborn is in your hands, and they hang on your every word. What surprises me most is when moms tell me that they are afraid to speak up because they don't want healthcare team to get mad at her or take it out on her baby. Practice humility and approachability. This looks different for all of us, of course, but just having the awareness of the heightened role you are playing and reminding yourself that this could be a barrier to open conversation is really critical. Parent pro tip number 4, the power of their presence. What is absolutely critical is for healthcare teams to tell parents how important it is for them to be there. As parent mentors, we are always asking parents when they went to the hospital to drive home just how important their presence bedside is. We know that there are research-backed benefits to them being there. But here's the hitch. Unless they are told, parents don't know how their presence may directly impact their baby's outcomes. Under this parent pro tip, it's important to take pause and look at this slide where I'm going to remind us all of the barriers we know about that prevent parents from being bedside in the NICU. Acknowledgement of a family's barriers with them goes so far for them to be seen. And taking it one step further, when you can mitigate these barriers, it really allows parents to feel like they are partners with you. Telling them how important their presence is critical. Taking that one step further and also recognize, even knowing this, they won't always be able to be there, is helpful to strengthen your relationship with parents. Parent pro tip number 5, the power of a purpose. Feeling included bestows a feeling of power. Give your parents a role to play. Include them in their baby's care. There is a lot that parents cannot do, only you can, but there is almost always something that they're uniquely positioned to do. Parents don't know about the research-backed benefits of their participation, whether it's in kangaroo care, providing breast milk, having the baby hear their voice. This is where we remind ourselves that parents don't know what they don't know. It's incredible what happens once parents have a purpose when they're at the NICU, and they know that their time at bedside doesn't just feel good, but also does good things. I want to draw attention, of course, to the non-birthing parent. They are usually the ones holding up the earth with one hand so the birthing parent can focus on the baby. Always invite them into the NICU world. Parent pro tip number 6, the power of learning new skills. Teach your parents as their NICU journey progresses. The truth is really that we want parents to be best set up for success upon discharge. Many parents will say that the months following a NICU admission are often harder than the NICU itself. We don't want to overwhelm them, but with God's good grace, that baby is being discharged to this parent, and the more well-informed they are, the better outcomes the baby will have after discharge. Parent pro tip number 7, the power of feeling successful and effective. Let's set parents up for success. They want to feel good about themselves as this baby's parent. And by creating opportunities for success, you boost their feelings of self-efficacy. I'm sure you can think of a half dozen opportunities to build up parents' self-esteem. Premature babies give birth to premature parents. They weren't ready, and they want to feel like they're growing and improving in their role as parents as their baby progresses. Parent pro tip number 8, the power of encouraging self-care. For some parents, self-care feels selfish or self-centered. They could care less about themselves at this point, and the last thing they want to do is leave their baby's bedside to take a walk. What we know is that is almost never sustainable. What I like to tell parents is that self-care means what's doing good for them, increasing their emotional and physical stamina so that they can endure the NICU experience in a healthy way. We found it helpful to speak with parents about getting into a weekly rhythm. We encourage self-care as transition rituals or practices as they drive into the hospital, allowing them to mentally shift between worlds outside the NICU and the world inside the NICU. Self-care also means the basic, encouraging them to build a support system, to exercise, eat healthy foods, access help, journal, relax, and sleep. Parent pro tip number 9, the power of being emotionally well. I left what I think is the most critical at the end, because research indicates that if all those other pro-parenting tips are followed, the emotional wellness of a parent is positively impacted. But we know postpartum depression and anxiety rates are sky high, and many of our units can't do much about this since there are no psychologists available to parents on the floor of the NICU. Rely on your social workers, your mentor groups, or assign someone a project to look at what community resources are available outside of the unit. Parent pro tip number 10, the power of people. I know there are some that say, my job is to take care of the baby and not the family. I understand that. I think we would be hard pressed to find a parent that would say, prioritize me over my baby. But let's do our best to humanize what is a foreign world. We are all people with our own stories and fears and struggle. The most dangerous and isolating actions is for healthcare teams to treat families like they are a routine case, even if that baby has had another NICU experience. The NICU experience is not at all routine for families. Empowering parents yields satisfaction, readiness, success, which leads to improved NICU outcomes, improved transition home, and improved long-term outcomes for the family unit. Everyone wants the same result for these NICU babies. Thank you for taking the time to hear our 10 pro tips for empowering parents. I'm sure you can add to this list, and I'd like you to. Let's continue this conversation. My email is on this slide. Reach out to me and let me know what has worked in your unit, or share any thoughts on the tips I've given. Finally, thank you for making parents a priority.